Welcome to the Spinal Chat Podcast, powered by the Pennsylvania Chiropractic Association. Today, we're continuing our conversations with the organizations that support the work we do and the chiropractors we serve. Over the last year, we've highlighted our strategic business partners, and today we're joined by our newest partner, Prudential. Some faces will already be familiar to our members. Tom, who many of you worked with in his previous role supporting financial services for the PCA, is back with us under the Prudential umbrella. And he's joined by his colleague, Annette Quigley, who brings deep expertise in business valuation, succession planning, insurance strategy, and long-term wealth planning. This conversation explores the financial challenges and opportunities facing chiropractic small business owners, the realities of transitioning a practice, and the long-term strategies that build both personal and professional security. Whether you're early in your career or approaching retirement, this discussion offers tools, perspective, and clarity. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Barba, and thank you for spending some time with us today. As we've done over the last year, we've spent some time with our strategic business partners, and today we have Prudential with us. They're a brand new partner with us here at the PCA, but there are some faces that look familiar. I have with me today Tom. Tom was originally with another organization that representing financial services to the PCA, and we're glad to have him back with Prudential. And I'd also like to introduce his colleague, Annette Quigley. And Annette as well works with Tom in regards to Prudential and some of that wealth growth. Hello to everyone. Thank you for being here.
Hello. Thank you.
You guys were explaining to me before, and I thought that we should get this on camera. This is Prudential. You guys both work with Prudential, but there may be other company names involved. Would you like to take a few minutes and explore what that is and what that means?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. And great to be back and working with the PCA again. It's been a little bit, but great to be back with the organization. And so we're Prudential Advisors. We're part of what we call the Mid-Atlantic Financial Group. That's our firm throughout the entire Mid-Atlantic. But as advisors, we run our own businesses as well. It's very much like being a chiropractor on your own, running your own business, but having an association that you're a part of on a bigger scale. So Annette is a financial advisor as well as myself. I'm also what's known as a regional director. So I oversee a group of advisors, but Annette is one of my key colleagues. Annette, I'll let you introduce yourself and your role as well.
Yeah, so good morning and thanks so much for having me. I'm excited on this new adventure. And as Tom mentioned, my paycheck comes from Prudential, but we have a kind of a unique experience where we really get to collaborate, where you may have one of us that has a certain expertise in buying or selling a business, or a certain expertise in properly positioning insurance or buy-sell agreement or taxes and wills and things of that nature. We love the fact that from a marketing standpoint, when we use our DBA, that we're able to educate, put out informational videos, a newsletter, things to our website that will keep our clients and potential clients informed, but we all are still under that Prudential umbrella. Thanks for letting us explain that today.
So let's get right into it, because the PCA represents 3,775 chiropractors. And we know that in the state of Pennsylvania, for at least the next 10 years, we're anticipating at least 100 chiropractors retiring from chiropractic, which is a good thing. It's also, I think, a sign that's pretty common amongst a lot of industry, with people getting to that certain age generationally and starting to look to transition out. One of the questions I have is, many of our chiropractors are small businesses with unique financial challenges of being a small business owner. How can you help them with their transition as they're planning for their future? They may not be planning to leave or to exit their practice tomorrow, but they are probably looking within a 5 to 10 year window. What can they start doing now, and how can Prudential help them in preparing for that eventual future?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Mike. And actually, funny enough, our industry is going through the exact same thing. About 40% of all financial advisors in our industry are expected to retire over the next 10 years. So part of my role and what I talk about with my advisors and other advisors throughout the industry is getting as much out of their practice as they can before they retire when they go to sell their practice. So we're very much in a similar position with what we do. And so there are various things that we talk about with business owners of how to get the most value out of your business. What is your business actually worth? And what are the different ways you could transition it on? And it's actually something Annette specializes in. Annette, if you want to talk a little more about some of the things that you do there specifically.
Yes. And so really, as you mentioned, Mike, it's really the long game. It's not, hey, I'm retiring at the end of the year, I want to sell my business. Whether it's the chiropractor business, we have dentist offices, financial planning practices, they all kind of fall in that same arena where depending on what your exit strategy is, if you're looking to sell to someone, if you're looking to within the practice, if you're looking to bring someone, on that you would then remain in a consultative capacity, it typically is anywhere from a 2 to sometimes as long as 5-year arrangement. And it can be a very customized process. We really start with the business valuation, start with the nature of what is the structure of your business, because it may be an LLC, it may be an S Corp, it may be a sole proprietor. You may have key members of that organization that you want to ensure if something should happen to you in the meantime, that the business continues. So there's a lot of moving parts, lots of different variables that need to be discussed when you're talking about a proper business succession plan or exit strategy.
I like that you had said that you start with valuing the business itself. And what I think is interesting about that is this. There's value and there's inherent value. And so sometimes I think somebody who's very close to a practice they've built, sometimes they may be overestimating what the actual value of the practice is and what they can receive as part of a sale price of the transition. And so what do we do when somebody finally goes to that valuation and they go, oh my God, there isn't a whole lot of value here. Although I will say from the Pennsylvania Chiropractic Association standpoint, is we really do think that's important to perhaps thinking about bringing on an associate or someone who's going to keep the continuity of practice going, building a practice within your practice to allow for them to take over for you. But if somebody's a sole chiropractor, they've done it their own way the entire time, and they have an idea in their mind of what their practice is worth. And then when they actually get the evaluation, they are maybe a little bit shocked by how low that evaluation is. What can Prudential do to help them prepare for maybe not having that magic number of liquidating the practice?
I think one of the best things you can do is start early and start to prepare, because there are various ways you can increase value within the practice as well. So making sure, like you said, Mike, having that succession plan, having the right staffing, having ways of retention of clients is very important, especially with what you guys all do. So there are various things you can do very early on to start to build out structure and scale to make your practice more valuable. But from an actual dollars and cents standpoint, and that, if you have some thoughts there too.
Yeah. And part of it is not just, hey, I bought this or I'm thinking about buying this practice, I hope the clients stick around. A big part of that is I hope the staff sticks around, right? Because it's a big transition for them. And am I going to be able to retain them? So a big part of that, working on the infrastructure from within, is, hey, we have a 401k, we have a defined benefit plan, we have different benefits of sorts that we're offering to these employees. So if there's a change in that leadership, that trajectory could indeed continue, but it has to be very clear, it has to be very defined. And you really, when you're thinking about that, it's such a customized process. You have to find someone whose goals are aligning with yours. For example, you're not going to be 57 like the average financial advisor is and selling your practice to someone who's 56, right? You're going to look for someone who's probably in their 40s and is like-minded as far as how they run their business, because that's your baby. You started it from scratch in a lot of cases. You care about, how that continues, and you want to make sure you're bringing someone on that will allow that to happen.
Annette, you said something really interesting. You had said that how do you also take care of your staff? And the staff may have many more years of work. And can you talk a little bit about some of the things that a chiropractor business owner can do on behalf of their staff through Prudential and through the services that you have? Because I think that's important. I think in today's market, we know job-wise, it's sometimes hard to find great staff. And when you find them, you've got to keep them. And keeping them, it's not always feasible to pay them more, especially for the work that they're doing. But you could bring in other resources that are also important as well.
For sure. So one of the big ones has got to be the retirement plan. And not every retirement plan is created equal. If you're a single one man or woman show, it might be something like a simplified employee pension. If you only have a few employees, it might be a simple IRA, all the way up to and including the 401k. So it really is evaluating the type of office structure that you have. But what any of these plans will do is not only will it allow you to recruit the ultimate employee that you want to have be part of your practice, but it's going to help you retain the ones that you have. Folks are becoming more and more educated and understanding that they really have to be the ones to try to fund what will be their retirement. They can't just rely on things like Social Security. So they're looking now to their employers, and they might be amply qualified, but they might choose another practice over yours because the other practice is going to offer them that benefit. And you can be very strategic where if there's turnover, you can set certain things like vesting schedules so that you're giving perhaps a match, but that person can't just leave day one with what it is that you've contributed for them. They can meet with a financial advisor that's attached to that plan to help give guidance to the participant, which essentially helps with enrollment rates, and it just helps them learn more about how the 401k works. They tend to participate more. So lots of resources available. And then for the business owner, there are ways that you can carve out, if you will, the rank and file employee, and you can really focus on stuffing away those tax deferred dollars, getting great tax write-offs now, creating income in the future when you finally do retire, things like defined benefit plans. So lots and lots of moving parts with that one as well, but it's really important to define what your particular practice makeup consists of. And the only other thing I'll add with that is key folks in the organization. You might be the owner, but you might have someone, not necessarily another chiropractor, but that key person that you couldn't run the practice without. There are ways to include them in some of those not just highly compensated, but more executive role type programs so that you can, again, dangle that carrot and make it interesting for them to stay and continue to support your practice.
Yeah, Mike, an example of that, I worked with a chiropractor over in Ohio a few years back who had that one key staff person, and she was responsible for going around and marketing the business and growing the business. She'd go from company to company, talk about what they did, how they work, giving a free consultation, things like that. And without her, his business would not have grown to be as successful as it was, and opening a second location, things along those lines. So those are the types of employees that we want to make sure you can retain and attract and help grow with over time, but also provide a lot of value to the business itself when you are looking for that succession planning.
You said the dreaded T word, which is taxes. And of course, we hear this all the time. We had a former president of the PCA, is one of his favorite lines is, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And so let's talk a little bit about taxes, and let's talk about what can be done. And we don't have to go into super detail, but some of the tax advantages there are to planning ahead and putting money away now as part of that process of preparing for your future, and how you can perhaps look at deferring and or utilizing some of the tools that you bring in to help with your tax burdens.
For sure. So a lot of times when we sit down and meet with a financial planning client, we'll make that distinct, hey, we're not tax preparers. But what we are is we are tax strategists. And there's a big difference, because a lot of times what we find is a business owner will go to, in some cases, that trusted CPA that they've been going to for north of a decade. But the CPA typically is not going to say, hey, if you move this over here or start putting more money there, you can save. Typically, the CPA is going to say, thanks for all of your records. I've done the necessary write-offs, and here's how much you owe. So where a financial planner or someone that's going to come in and help, like a coach, a business coach, if you will, they're going to help more with the strategy. So the strategy is going to say, hey, you're this old, you plan on retiring at this year, you have this many employees. Part of it is the not understanding how the retirement plans work, thinking it's going to be very HR heavy, lots of time consuming, lots of expenses, and once they get that eye opening of, wow, I can get a 401k in a box. I can have a financial advisor run this for me. I can make sure that it's integrated with my payroll so that people start contributing. And a lot of times the business owner will say, that's great, but there's limits to 401k plans. So it's not really going to help me as much as it's going to help my employees. So then what can I do? So that's when we start getting into the more complex scenarios where they actually bring actuarials in, and you have what are called defined benefit plans, very complex plans, but wonderful once they get set up. You're not just getting a tax write-off, you're getting tax credits, and huge tax credits up to certain limits if you're able to contribute. So wonderful way to fast track those dollars toward retirement, but save taxes today, since we do know now from that big, beautiful bill, love it or hate it, that we have tax. Obviously, our brackets are going to be fixed, we know, for the next couple of years, but we don't know what they're going to be in the future. So having that strategy and being proactive versus just only saving tax deferred dollars, maybe saving now some Roth dollars, paying taxes on the seed, not on the harvest. All those strategies are what are going to really help you come to fruition as far as what you want your retirement to look like.
Yeah, and one of the things I've seen Annette do very well with this is position herself like a personal CFO to the business, where the doc is the CEO of their business and running it day to day. Hiring someone to come in and be your CFO to worry about the financials, everything with a dollar sign, and making sure everything's efficient, put in the right places, or could it be moved to create new efficiencies or new opportunities? That's really where you can leverage someone like Annette and myself to help.
Yeah, and I think that's a really neat idea is I think a lot of chiropractors, especially are entrepreneurs. They went through chiropractic school. They may have taken a few seminars here and there, but knowing how to be good entrepreneurs and really having the ability of a CFO to come in and have that critical eye towards the practice, towards the business, towards the strategy. Because let's be honest, we don't know what we don't know. And I think we get very comfortable in what we know and sometimes miss out on the opportunities because we're not introduced to the new or what is possible through that. So I think that's a great service. And Tom, I really like the way that you put that, is because you want someone who is dispassionate to come in and actually say, okay, let's really look at what's what, as opposed to someone coming in and wanting to make you feel better about whatever decisions you made in the past. I mean, I'm assuming you guys aren't mean, but there is a point where you have to maybe show a little tough love into those type of situations, especially if somebody has an idea of what they're hoping for, and maybe the reality of their now doesn't support that tomorrow. And that's some of the structure that you guys can help put into it.
Yeah. Never mean, but always objective. So
Right.
We like to have conversations with our clients and say, one of my partners says, hey, we're as subtle as a shovel to the head, right? And there's something to be said about that, because transparency is key. We remove the emotions is essentially what we do. We're treating our clients' money like it's their own, but we're not emotionally attached. So it allows us to objectively say, we said we were going to do this retirement plan in the beginning of the year, and we didn't. Why is that, right? And life happens. They work, as you said, they're really good on their business, and the money's coming in, they have cash flow, their bills are getting paid. So they're not necessarily just having the time or the energy or the focus to be forward thinking. And all of a sudden it creeps up because you wake up in your 50s and you think, yikes, I don't have that plan. The other reason why it's so important to work with a professional once you have any sort of plan in place is because it changes all of the time. Little nuanced changes, but it could be a scary thing if you have a 401k and all of a sudden it's no longer compliant. Things like, oh, I now have to let, part-time people in if there's certain rules that are hit, or, oh, anybody over 50 now starting next year has to do a catch-up that's only Roth, or all these little nuances that you shouldn't have to worry about, quite frankly, as a business owner. You need to focus on what your superpower is, and then let that team that you've surrounded yourself with make sure that it goes seamlessly and compliant as well.
Many chiropractors in the midst of just running a business pour everything back into the business. And there are times where they really don't have an understanding of what they need to build wealth along with building personal wealth, along with building practice wealth or business wealth. Can we talk about some of the strategies that Prudential can deploy in order to show them the difference of both personal goals and professional goals, business goals, that alongside that they aren't mutually exclusive? They can be something that can be worked on together.
Yeah. So the biggest thing, honestly, is if you've never had a financial plan, whether it's with us or with someone else, that is really one of the first things that you should consider starting. Because in my eyes, what it does is it creates that foundation. And it says, here's where I am today. Here's where I want to be 5 or 10 or 30 years from now. How can I get there? I often say to clients, hope is not a strategy. We don't want to, if we have a retirement plan, we don't want to just put money in and hope that one day I can retire and it's performed enough for me to draw from it. So part of it is stress testing. Once you have that foundation in place, what if inflation goes back up? My greatest asset is to get up and get out of bed every day and put my feet on the ground and be a chiropractor. What if I become disabled and that choice is taken away? I may have to retire early due to family dynamics. All of these things that life can throw at us very sneakily when we're not anticipating it. You have to have that plan, because the plan will say, if this happens or if that happens, or if you want to sell your practice, but you may not get nearly what you wanted, or something may happen out of your control that for whatever reason that sale doesn't come to fruition. Then what is that backup plan? How can you look to have other buckets, if you will, that are going to pay you, whether it's guaranteed income or tax-free monies, depending on what, the circumstances are. So it's definitely starting that foundation and saying, hey, here's my goals. It's not just about who's got the best return. It's about what's the return that you need to accomplish the goals, and what is the strategy behind it to get you there.
Yeah, just a quick addition. Another way to phrase it maybe is the Mike Tyson quote: everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? So we're there to be your punch blockers, if you will. So that if anything goes wrong, or whenever the plan does get railed, because life does happen, that's where a financial planner really comes in to help you prepare for that, both the good and the bad, everything that comes along with it.
Can you share how Prudential uses products like life insurance and annuities in creating long-term wealth for people? How do those actually work? How can that be of benefit to a chiropractor?
So one of the things I love to say is I am product agnostic. So essentially, I work with Prudential, as we notated before, but not for Prudential. So really what that means is I don't always have to say, hey, Prudential is going to have the best solution, right? So we actually work with one of the number one insurance brokers in the country, and we're able to go to them and say, hey, here's the situation. We have someone that might have had a couple of health hiccups, or they're maybe buying life insurance a little bit later in life than they planned, or they used to smoke, but it's only been 6 months since they quit, or those sorts of things. So we're able to go in from an underwriting standpoint and kind of customize what that would look like. But it's more about just the numbers. It's more about, hey, I have a mortgage and I don't want to leave my family with debt. It's also about, hey, when I retire, if I'm still alive and well, can I use this life insurance as a strategy to create tax-free income for myself in my retirement? But in the meantime, if unfortunately I don't make it as long as I'd like, I have a tax-free death benefit for my family. There are other ways, if you're, again, looking to sell your business, partnering with another chiropractor perhaps, where you're doing what's called a buy-sell arrangement, or where you can have a triggering event. It's not just, hey, if I pass away, it's, hey, if I retire, there are now proceeds from this policy that are going to help this other person buy me out versus me trying to get paid over time. If I have that key person, as Tom mentioned, the nurse that did all the office administrator that did all of the marketing, how can I replace that person? It may take me years of training the next individual. So I might buy a key man policy on this person because I see the value there. All these different ways that you can look at it, but every case truly is different. Sometimes we do what we call split tickets because we're always mindful of the price point. That's important. I can't just come to a client with all these wonderful ideas and say, by the way, it's going to cost you $2,500 a month to achieve this. They may not have that. So we have ways of meeting what that price point is, maybe doing some term, some that's going to be more of a financial tool that builds a cash value. But any way you look at it, we're looking at that individual and coming back with solutions that, number one, aren't just Prudential, but number two, the companies have been vetted. We simply can't do business with companies that don't have the utmost rating, which is equally important. And we're just looking at the circumstances of, again, when does that individual want to retire? What other buckets do they have that will pay them out income? All of those good things.
Yeah, and products are changing all the time across the industry, not just with Prudential products, but and to Annette's point, we have a very open architecture. So we're always looking for the right solution more so than a product itself. Think of it this way too, Mike. While life insurance can provide a death benefit if you die too young, it can also be an asset. It provides growth and cash growth in different vehicles. Annuities, same thing. Annuities have changed dramatically over the last decade in how they're designed and what they can do for someone. But the investment marketplace, the managed investments, brokerage accounts, constantly changing as well. And not only is it about being product agnostic, but thinking about what you want to accomplish. Just because you want the best performance, you don't necessarily want to go for the product with the best performance because it could have high taxes, it could have high risk, it could have high fees as well. So we want to make sure we're balancing those, specifically those four things: taxes, risk, performance, and fees, when we're helping provide the right product solution for someone. So it could be used in combination, it could just be one, but ultimately all of those products that you mentioned do come into play when working with business owners specifically.
Well, I
Yeah.
really appreciate that you guys are looking for the best service and the best product for you. That means a lot, right? Because I don't want to be sold this just because it's what you sell. And I appreciate that. I want to dig a little bit more into the mindset that some of these products are safety net products and not really, they see more of a sunk cost as opposed to an investment tool. And you guys touched on this, but can we explore that a little bit more? Because my dad, for instance, who was fairly successful in a lot of things, refused to get life insurance. And because he said he felt that he's betting against himself, which was just such a stupid thing to say. But that was his kind of mindset in regards to life insurance. He certainly didn't need it, but the larger conversation there was when I went out as a young man, when I had my first kids, I immediately bought life insurance because I wanted to make sure that no matter what, they're going to be taken care of. And so can we talk about that idea of it's A, not necessary, B, it's a sunk cost and it's really not an investment vehicle? I think that might be a really interesting conversation to explore.
It's all about risk. So if I can be in a scenario where I can put this much of my hard-earned money, but pass this much risk onto a third party, and that risk may or may not happen, it really is looking at it from that standpoint. So let's talk for a moment just about like disability insurance, right? So the odds of me getting hit by the bus tomorrow are much less than the odds of me potentially becoming disabled where I can't get up every day and do my job. So for me, if I want my business to keep running, my employees to keep getting paid, clients to keep coming in, if I have a structure where I have a backup person that can come in and fill in for me and do my job, I don't want the whole place to have to close down if something happens to me. I don't want my employees that I've helped and they've helped, in many cases, me build the business, that's it. You have to go find another job because now I'm disabled and maybe forever. So looking to say, hey, if I look at it as a percentage of what I'm able to make when I'm healthy and the business is running the right way and I have the best employees and the best positions, then it's a very small percentage to pay to say, hey, now I know that I'm going to be able to keep food on my table, keep sending the kids to college, keep my business running if I've just pushed this risk off to a company. And to your point, Mike, it's funny because I've been doing this for 26 years now, and I can't count the number of times when I talk about long-term care that the husband, it's always the husband. That happens to me, going out to the shed, taking care of them. Right? So then my comeback is, but what if you don't remember where the shed is? And then I get a little chuckle. These are sensitive topics that we don't want to talk about because we think we're going to live forever. We're going to be healthy forever. When the business is good, it's good. But all of a sudden, when it's not good, we don't want to find ourselves in that situation where we're selling things we don't want to sell, whether it's investments or homes or our business prematurely for a fire sale because we have to hurry to make those arrangements. It's all about, again, laying that foundation and saying, hey, where does it make sense? There are people that are overinsured. We meet them every day and we say, you don't need this much insurance. You could probably look to put it into an investment. But any way you slice it, that's usually a pretty foundational piece of a financial plan, is to push what risk you can off to an insurance company.
Yeah, the way I always explained it and thinking about protection and its insurances in general, it's not what it is, it's what it does when you need it. And think of it like you're building a house. The foundation of your house is your income. Without your income, nothing else matters, right? If you can't have an income, you can't buy investments, you can't buy insurance products, you have no income. So protecting your income is always the foundation. But then as you put up the walls, that's protecting your life, protecting your health. If anything goes wrong there, your house comes crumbling down. So how can we protect the walls? And then everything inside the house, the roof, the furniture, everything else, that's everything you're planning for the future. So think of that as like your IRAs, your 401ks, everything like that you start to fill in your house with. That's the way I've always described it. But if you don't have one of those walls protected and a storm comes along, your house crumbles. And that's a simple way to put it.
Yep.
You both touched on, we've been talking a lot about older people planning, catching up, if you will. But let's talk about a young chiro, just getting started, may still have student debt, may still be worried about making sure he's making ends meet or she's making ends meet. Talk to me about how you would explain balancing a future focused and a kind of a long-term health plan, financial health plan, I should say, in a world where you are really making a choice. If I make this investment, I'm making it but it may be at the detriment of having more funds to do X, Y, or Z with. And for that young practitioner starting out with a lot of startup capital, maybe not having as big of a book, what does that look like? What kind of tools are available for them to maybe incrementally grow their investment portfolio starting out?
So I've told my clients for decades now, it's not timing the market, it is time in the market. So even if that young person who thinks, oh, I can't possibly part with this $100 a week, we simply find it. I do a lot of education for young people just starting out in their careers. And I'll say, by show of hands, and I'm sure if I had your 3,700 plus members, and I said, by show of hands, how many people are hitting that Starbucks drive-through every day? Keep them up if you're hitting it twice a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, because we're busy, right? We're going to hit that drive-through. You have kids, especially nowadays, you have kids' sports, school, and you're trying to manage life. So what happens is, even if you say, okay, I'm only going to get my Starbucks on Mondays and Fridays, and then Tuesday through Thursday, I've made an intentional decision to now take that coffee. I can buy Starbucks at the grocery store, take that coffee into the office. Those little incremental changes, that $25, $50 a week, over time, you will adjust your budget accordingly, and you will start to then reap the benefits of that. Because as their practice grows, and as they're now saying, oh, yikes, I'm paying more in taxes, I'm keeping less, coming up with that strategy early on, it is certainly going to be a huge difference. And to your point, if you have a child, or if you now have a spouse, or all these people that are depending on you, you can rent insurance, I like to say, pretty cheaply, a 20 or 30-year term that will satisfy income replacement or paying off debts, et cetera, if something happens to you. But you also, in most cases, have the ability to convert that insurance. And that's huge, because if I'm 30 now, and next thing I'm an 18-year myself breast cancer survivor. I was only 35 when I got it. No history in mom's side, dad's side. So there wasn't an insurance company on the planet that would touch me at the time. So I had to convert an existing policy. So I protected my insurability, didn't have to answer any health questions, paid a little bit more, but I was able to keep that insurance. So when people look at renting the term, it doesn't have to be forever. You can convert it and make it then into a policy that's more of a financial tool, building cash value investments and the like. But in the meantime, it's going to allow you, from a price point, since every dollar counts, to be able to satisfy what you need, but not break the bank. And then making those little lifestyle changes, maybe packing lunch, just being mindful of the Starbucks drive-through, and saving those dollars in retirement over time is really going to pay off.
Yeah, and a couple other things there too. So you think about the Albert Einstein quote, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world, right? So I think the number one thing, if you ask somebody who's retiring, what would they do to have had more wealth at retirement? I bet the number one answer is probably start sooner. One of the things that we always talk about, one of the first steps in our process, is going through cash flow and budgeting, and taking a look at money in, money out, where are you spending, where are your expenses? Are you actually funding your own life and paying yourself first? How are you doing that? What's the efficiency there? Those are some of the things that we look at very early on in the process to help, and especially with younger people. And that said, the sooner you can start down that path, the better budgeting you have, the better cash flow analysis you have, the better off you're going to be for the long run. And ultimately, Mike, I don't want to speak for Annette, but one of my favorite things is seeing people retire before they expected. Mm-hmm. So if we can help someone retire sooner than they expected, that's one of my favorite things about what we do.
Yep.
Yeah, you know what's funny is the lottery was just $1 billion, and I went and, of course, bought my ticket because it's silly to not. My son was like, the odds are like getting struck by a lightning while being mauled by a bear in a movie theater. But I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm still going to pay my $3 for this ticket. A lot of docs just feel that they're just going to keep working. All right, they're going to work until they can't work anymore. And it's funny, you were talking about disability earlier. There are a lot of docs, chiropractic being a fairly physical job, and because it's a repetitive motion job, there are some docs who are not able to do some of the procedures that they're able to do because of the constant use and constants doing that. So let's talk about that kind of lack of retirement planning, or the retirement planning, if you will, based off of I'm just going to work until I die, and the reality of really what that looks like. Can we explore that a little bit? And by the way, Annette, congratulations on 18 years of health. That's really,
Thank you so much. We don't want to get older, but that's a birthday, my second birthday, if you will, that I don't mind celebrating for sure. Thank you.
sure.
So it's funny because we've heard that story so many times in our careers, and I have one that sticks with me personally. I had a gentleman that ran a very successful newspaper publication, went to tens and tens of thousands of households. He was the unofficial mayor, if you will, of his town, and just everybody knew this person, his family, everyone worked at the paper. And he would always say, he was well into his 80s at that point, he would always say, I'm going to get shot by a jealous husband. That's how I'm going to go out. And his wife would jokingly be like, oh, enough already. Just wonderful family. They didn't by way of retirement planning because they always thought we're going to have this business forever. This is our cash flow. And it worked so well for nearly 5 decades. Unfortunately, the same client broke my heart. He wound up having to go on dialysis, which ultimately he made the decision on his own terms to stop the treatment because he said in his Southern accent, he wasn't living, he was just existing, right? So he made that decision. And his family supported him. They had not much choice in the matter. But what I saw transpire after his passing really was just heartbreaking because the business had to close down. There was about 30 people who lost jobs. His wife had to sell their home, had to have a daughter move in to become her caretaker. Just things just kept compiling more and more. And as a planner, you almost feel like, how could I have done a better job, right? To convince this person or influence this person or show them some striking numbers on a piece of paper that's going to make it resonate with them and be like, wow, I really need to do this plan. And the truth of it is as they say, you can lead the horse to water. So we just really hope that when clients engage, whether it's with us or with another planner, that they have attorney, CPA, et cetera, that you have to trust the process. You have to go with someone that feels the same way about money that you do philosophically. They understand they're not just hearing, but they're listening to what your goals are and making sure that what you're doing is aligned with those goals. So finding that trusting relationship and then saying, hey, how can we make it work for me? Whether I'm new and I don't have the money to do this, or whether I'm starting late and I have money, but it might just be in the bank, not working hard enough. So a lot of that is just, again, having that plan. And I know I keep going back to that, but coming up with a plan to be able to say, this is where I am, this is where I need to be, because you might be doing better than you've given yourself credit for. If you say, I'm going to work till 80, and we say, hey, the mental shift is you can retire tomorrow, but if you want to work till 80, great, keep working till you're 80. But the more, imperative thing is, hey, if the choice is taken away, do you know that you can retire if you need to at 64 or 5 or 6 or whatever that number may be?
Yeah, Mike, Annette mentioned she's been in the business 26 years. I'm 21 years in, and this is something we see a lot of, especially with business owners. And I think it comes down to 2 emotions, really. Number one is a love for a business you've built from the ground up, typically, and built and grown and been a part of. It's been a part of your life for so long. That's tough to let go of. So the other emotion is fear. What happens when I let this go? And I don't know what's going to happen, or to my staff, or to my business, or to my family. And a lot of the fear component simply comes from a lack of planning. Because if you've had that plan in place, you shouldn't have that fear. So if anyone's feeling that fear, let's help with a plan. That is the best thing I could say there, because we see it all the time. We see it in our business too. As we run our own practices, I have advisors in our firm that have been here 40, 50 years. And a couple of them, it's love. They don't want to let go because they love what they do so much. But there's definitely been times it's a fear factor too.
Let's flip this coin a little bit. There are also, we know that people are living a lot longer these days. And I've always been very impressed. We put on conferences and what have you. And the long-term health of chiropractors is very impressive, right? These guys obviously know how to live well and have treated their bodies well. And therefore, it's not surprising to see someone who's very spry for being as old as they are. There's a very real fear of outliving your retirement planning and that kind of retirement trajectory, especially now with a lot of costs rising. That's not something you necessarily plan for. You don't expect inflation to be what it is when you're boy, I wish I would have had $100 in 1980 as opposed to what it's worth today. And so I think one of those things is, how do we plan for maybe living longer than what we had originally thought we would, which is maybe a great problem to have. But how do we plan for that? And how does Prudential help us with that?
Yeah, longevity risk is really a huge elephant in the room, if you will, because we do counsel clients a lot that say, oh, unfortunately, mom passed away at 70 or dad passed away at 72. So I guess inherently they think that's going to be me. And it is true that years and years ago, people would work for probably about 3, maybe 4 decades. They would retire for 1 decade. They'd pass away, but they also had a pension, right? Now we work for the same 3 or 4 decades, but we retire for 3 or 4 decades and we don't have pensions, especially business owners. So it becomes a risk. But part of it, when people think of, hey, investing money, whether it's in a retirement plan or just in a mutual fund, et cetera, they think, oh, stock market risk. I need this cash if I need to invest in my business, so I can't invest any of it. And then 2 years and 3 years and 5 years goes by and the cash is still cash. And the problem is now they've lost purchasing power. It buys them half of what it would have the year before, whether it's equipment for the business or monies to hire a new employee that you're giving a bonus, whatever the case is. So it's not just about market risk. It's about that longevity risk. What if I live? Or it's about that, what if I have a medical emergency? I'm living, but it costs a lot to keep me alive. Can I self-insure that? So all of these different risks, huge thing to look at when you're doing a plan. It's not just about, hey, I'm going with this investment because it's giving me 0.5% more than that investment. To Tom's point, it's more about taxes. It's more about that strategy. And it's about, what if I live? Do I have the items in place, essentially, that are going to take care of me, but not leave maybe my spouse saying, yikes, now what am I going to do if I need, this, because we've already sold the home and we've liquidated investments and that sort of thing. So it's a very real risk. But again, if you're planning ahead and you have essentially buckets that cover those different phases of life, you're going to be better off than someone that's just going it alone or going from monies in the bank, essentially.
Yeah, and I'll add 2 other parts of that. Not thinking about just healthcare in general and life in general. Preventative care is a big part of that, but then legacy planning for how you're going to pass things on, I think, are 2 very important parts of this. And Mike, I'll give a shout out to 2 docs out there. Dr. Barrett, who actually was my chiropractor, and I started working with him years ago, getting adjusted, helping me after sports injuries for years. But then I want to shout out to Dr. Samuels out in Western Pennsylvania as well. I did some healthcare planning with her through one of her programs. I lost 50 pounds thanks to her and the program that I worked on with her. And that was something that I see in my own family. Is on my mom's side, obesity is an issue. On my dad's side, heart problems are an issue. So it hit me when I literally didn't recognize who I was in a picture. And it hit me that I needed to do something drastically different. And Dr. Samuels actually helped me with that and got me on track and lost a ton of weight. So that preventative care side of it, because having a legacy and leaving something or building something for myself, for my future family, was very important. And the longevity part of that is you got to start with the preventative care side of it, and what we can do in different ways from a financial preventative care is something that we can help with, and financially for a business, and preventative care for your business as well. But going back to that succession planning, the exit strategy, that's the legacy of what you've built, and helping build that, get the most out of it, prepare for it, and have that plan on later in life, whenever it is you do want to pass your business on to someone else.
I want you to put your financial planner hats on. One of the things that's interesting is at each stage of life, there's risk aversion to how you make your investments. Can you guys spend a little bit of time? I don't want you to go into all the secret sauce, but spend a little bit of time in talking about where people should be based off their practice. So let's go new doc to middle career to end of career, and the relative risk, or what investment vehicles is best, really the mix. And I know the mix is up to the individual and everything is individually based, but as a rule of thumb, is there a rule of thumb you should be more in bonds, and if you're older, as opposed to being younger, going fully in the market and really trying to double your money as much as you can, back to what you had said, Annette, about the time in the market instead of the market that you're getting out of the time. Can you guys put on your hats a little bit and give us a little bit of a rule of thumb of investment and what strategies could be deployed if somebody's thinking about getting serious about their financial future?
So part of it, to your point, is it does depend on the individual. I can look at a sheet of paper and say, hey, you're on 35. You should be 80% stocks and 20% bond, right? But again, how that individual may feel about money philosophically that might got have passed down from them from the previous generation, I can tell them that till the day is long, but they might still be having a sleepless night. So part of it is them recognizing what their risk tolerance is. But part of it is, again, accepting help and coaching from someone that's going to say, hey, you can do 50% bond because you might be worried about tariffs, or you're worried about all these things that we're always inundated with every day in the news. But the reality is you're selling yourself short and you might only have this much. So you're going to have to adjust your retirement accordingly, or not travel as much, or work longer, or all those things that, come into play. So when you look at it, obviously, the closer we are to retirement, it makes sense to, I've been running this race, I won this trophy, I don't want to give the trophy back, right? So what I always like to say is there are 3 different kinds of returns. And it doesn't matter if you're 30 years old or if you're 90 years old. The 3 different kinds of returns. Number 1 is the return that you want, right? You're talking to that colleague or that family member at the dinner table, or you're watching some show. I want that 15% return, right? The return that you got, and we all have gone through the 2008s and the 2022s, if we've invested and realized we've lost double digits, that's scary. And both of those, they come into play, but the return that you need is the most crucial return of all. And most clients, when we meet with them, cannot give us what that number is, because the return that you need is based on what you want to accomplish. If your retirement is 2-3-month European cruises twice a year, right? You're going to have a heftier retirement savings than someone that says, I just want to spend more time with the grandkids and go fishing and just not set my alarm on a Monday morning. So part of it is that customization, staying diversified at every turn, not just getting roped into the TikTok, put your money in AI or buy Bitcoin, again, having that diversified foundation. But the mix is going to depend a lot on what you want your retirement to look like. And then the guidance of someone that's, again, listening, not just hearing, and putting you into that. And then I'll preface with this as well, the strategy behind it, because most advisors we're all have the same stuff, right? We're not going to have some magic thing that's going to give you a better return than the guy down the street. But if I say I'm giving you a 10% return, but it's not a tax sensitive return, and you're a successful chiropractor in a high tax bracket, what does that 10% return mean? Because how much of it can you keep in your pocket? Or if you retire and you're still getting paid out on the business, like in a consultative capacity for years into retirement, you're not in that ideological, like lower tax bracket that we all think about when we retire. And now I have higher Medicare premiums and I'm not keeping as much of that return. So a lot of it is, what bucket of monies am I going to have when I retire? Am I going to have a bucket that's accessible, very boring, but liquid if I have an emergency, or I want to do a trip, or I want to live off of it for 6 months? Then I have my middle of the road bucket, working a lot harder, either sensitive to taxes or maybe some of my retirement that I converted to Roth. And then the last one is, hey, this is my long-term. If I need long-term care, if my lifestyle changes because I've gotten older and I have different needs now. So a lot of it is more strategying it that way. And it truly is customized, even though I might say, oh, close to retirement, you want to only have a 60-40 versus an 80-20. There's generalities that you would follow, but everyone's so different. I have people in their 90s that are still 80-20. Because they have a high tolerance for risk and they just want that money to grow, but they also have enough of it that if they take a hit, they can afford it, versus the next person may not, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Another way to think about it too is think about Mount Everest, and your life is going up one side, down the other, right? So when you're going up, as you're getting older, you start off aggressive, you start building, you're growing, you're accumulating, you're in the accumulation phase and you want to accumulate as much as possible. But as you get closer to that peak, you slow down. You got to take your breath, right? The oxygen's thinner up there. Mm-hmm. But when do most people get hurt when climbing Mount Everest? It's on the way down, not on the way up. So that distribution phase, and as you're coming down the mountain during retirement, do we have the right things in place? Do we have the right income streams? Again, going back to cash flow that I mentioned earlier, are the right things in place there? Do you have the right protections? But you can still be trying to grow your assets at that phase as well. It's just, have you done it the most effective way on the distribution fears on your way down the mountain?
You know, what's funny, a lot of our conversation is centered around retirement and retirement planning. And there's a lot to be said about having the confidence of having a net worth. You have a great business, you have great resources coming in, But can you guys explore with me a little bit more of what that means throughout the kind of planning stage and the run up to, if you will, when you're ready to tap that quote unquote net worth? What is net worth as opposed to actually living with net worth?
Great question. So I love to say that we really don't live in a net worth society. It feels good. It looks good when we get our statement, and we like to say, hey, I've reached that milestone of I'm a millionaire, or I'm a multimillionaire, and I've built this successful practice, and things are good when they're good. The issue is we really live more in a cash flow society, right? So there are people that we see, whether it's selling a business or preparing for retirement, that have a much happier retirement when they know that they have that guaranteed cash flow, or they have that business succession plan in place because they have that backup plan. So I can't go out to eat tonight and say, hey, I have $1 million net worth. The waitress isn't going to care about that. She just wants to know, what is my cash flow? Can I pay the bill? So it's very much the same, that mentality, that mental shift is, hey, I want to arrive. Yeah, I'm hanging my hat on this building, or this business rather, that I likely built from scratch. But it's more than just that. It's what happens if my business somehow fails, circumstances out of my control. What is my cash flow? How can I keep my cash flow? How can I pay my employees? How can I pay my bills and continue to send my kids to school and pay my mortgage? That's really what it's more about than anything. Hello, everyone. Annette Quigley, a senior partner with Frame Wealth Partners in collaboration with Prudential, and really just built my practice on giving advice. I don't get paid to sell you stuff. I really like to get to know you, your business, and how I can help just with every aspect, whether it be continuation of the business, should something happen to you, business succession planning, formulating exit strategies, evaluation of the business, hiring and retaining the right employee for your business, and beyond the business, taking care of your retirement, your family, the goals that you would like to achieve. And again, very advice-driven strategy, building a foundation through financial planning. And please use me as a resource. I look forward to getting any questions or concerns, and I'm here to help.
Hello, Tom McElwee here. Great to work with you all again. Very excited and grateful to be part of the PCA as a business member again. And as we get going, one of the things I want to make sure you're aware of is the financial education that we can help provide, and looking forward to providing some ongoing work with the PCA around that. So jump on those webinars, take a look, but reach out. I'd love to reconnect with those that I've talked to in the past. For those of you that haven't, I look forward to eventually speaking with you at the different events coming up here in the future as well. But keep in mind that our approach is very consultative. The first couple of meetings with us, no obligation. We want to get to know you, get to know your practice, get to know your family and your life, and see what we can do to help, if anything at all. And worst case scenario, we leave you with some ideas that you can take with you for the rest of your life. Best case scenario, we can talk more about how we can specifically help you. Look forward to talking to you all soon.
And I'm Mike Barba. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this video. I want to thank Prudential for their partnership and their support of the PCA. And I want to thank all of you for watching. Have a wonderful day.
That wraps up today's episode. A special thank you to Tom and Annette from Prudential for sharing their expertise and for joining us as a PCA strategic business partner. Their insight into practice valuation, succession planning, retirement strategy, staff retention, and long-term financial health is invaluable for chiropractors at every stage of their career. You'll find links to their contact information, educational resources, and upcoming financial planning webinars in the show notes. If you have questions or would like a direct introduction, feel free to reach out to us at the PCA. As always, thank you to our members for your continued support and engagement. The PCA's ability to advocate, educate, and elevate our profession is made possible because of you. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a colleague, subscribe to the podcast, and stay connected for more strategic business partner highlights throughout the year. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep advancing chiropractic care in Pennsylvania.